With warmer weather finally upon us in the Northeast, that means it's time for backyard barbecues, s'mores, and trips to the lake or ocean. Some might even venture out into the woods with nothing more than a tent and some supplies, while others may ship their kids off to summer camp. However, I prefer to avoid sleeping on the ground with creepy crawlies, bears, and hockey masked killers lumbering through the woods looking to punish kids for having premarital sex and doing drugs. And while Friday the 13th took the slasher elements laid out by John Carpenter's Halloween, moving the premise to the woods and upping the body count, camp horror has expanded beyond Jason with films like Sleepaway Camp, The Blair Witch Project, Wrong Turn, and Cabin Fever, introducing new forms of terror that can kill you in the woods. I will even go as far as to say that the documentary of Timothy Treadwell, The Grizzly Man, while not a horror film, the ending is just another reason why I'll just find a nearby hotel with AC and a pool. Here are 5 camp horror movies that may make you rethink sleeping in the woods that you may not have,
or probably,
heard of.
Number 5. When a horror film features scream queens Felissa Rose and Danielle Harris, is there anything else that needs to be said? Camp Dread is about an 80s horror director, Julian Barrett, played by Eric Roberts, who was famous for a trilogy of camp slasher films, but when the decade ended, so did Julian's career. Fast forward ahead 20-ish years, with the resurgence of horror through reboots and remakes, Barrett sees it as an opportunity to resurrect his career, but with a twist. Rebooting his 80s classic horror films and transitioning from being a film series to becoming a reality game show where contestants are competing for $1 million by surviving a series of challenges and the show's killer who will eliminate them when he finds them. However, when one of the contestants shows up dead for real, things take a turn for the worse. B. Harrison Smith makes best use of his limited budget by delivering some brutal kills that are framed just right to make your stomach turn, as it feels more real and visceral than we may have seen in many modern-day slasher films today. It's a great take on a camp horror that has a fresh story that infuses our current culture viewing habits into a horror film. Number 4.
It wouldn't be a camp horror list unless the Queen of Horror appeared on it more than once. Felissa Rose graces our list again, this time with one of her most recent horror films, Bloody Summer Camp. In this 80s retro slasher horror comedy, camp counselors gather for the summer season at Camp Trustfall. It's a mix of new faces and old at the camp, which causes tension within the group that only heightens when wheelchair-bound counselor Donnie goes missing and the head counselors try to keep it hidden. Soon, the counselors begin to wonder if Mikey, a boy who died at the camp a few years earlier, had returned to seek revenge, or is it just his deranged mother seeking revenge for his death? One by one, the counselors are stalked and killed by the deranged killer in a devil's mask. Chock full of horror tropes, Bloody Summer Camp is Dave Kerr's love letter to the slasher genre, with 80s references and jokes that viewers who did not grow up in the 80s might miss. It was a crowd-funded flick that delivers on its budget with several scene-stealing performances that will have you laughing out loud.
Number 3. Before we return to the bleaker picks on our list, we have one last camp horror comedy for you, The Final Girls, starring that girl who looks like Vera Farmiga from the Conjuring films and Adam Devine. Max, who is played by Vera Farmiga's sister Thaisa, has to deal with reliving the trauma of her mother's death when the local theater pays tribute to her on the 3rd anniversary of her passing by playing the 80s slasher film Camp Bloodbath that she starred in. Max and her friends decide to head to the showing where things go horribly wrong as the theater catches ablaze with them inside. As panic ensues and fire engulfs the theater, they manage to escape through a hole in the movie theater screen, but step out into another world, finding themselves inside the film Camp Bloodbath. Realizing where they are, not only do they have to piece together the rules of surviving a slasher film, Max must deal with the emotions of being in a world with a younger version of her mother before she was born. The Final Girls is one of the best, if not the best, camp horror comedies going today. But if you're not a fan of Adam Devine, who plays his usual sex-crazed, arrogant self, who likes to show off the blessings he's been endowed with, then you may want to pass on it. Number 2.
Never Hike Alone is a fan film free on YouTube that expands on the Friday the 13th universe. Hiker and blogger Kyle McLeod is on a backpacking excursion when he comes across an abandoned camp that he decides to explore and soon uncovers that it is the legendary Camp Crystal Lake. Despite knowing the lore of Jason Voorhees, McLeod continues to investigate the campgrounds until his presence raises the ire of Jason, who attacks him unsuccessfully. Now, a wounded McLeod must rely on his survival skills and try to find his way out of the woods, with Jason hot on his heels looking to finish what he started. Never Hike Alone is refreshing for the franchise as it does not feature a group of kids being picked off one by one. It does not feature the typical gore and kills that you would expect from a Friday the 13th film. Instead, Vincent DeSante delivers a suspenseful story that once it takes off, you can't help but be on the edge of your seat for the chase and fight for survival that takes place. Because unlike other Jason films, you don't know how the story will end. We will tell you that the ending will make you jump out of your seat, and when you are done, left with that feeling that you want more, the sequel Never Hike in the Snow, yes people, a snowy Crystal Lake, is also available on YouTube.
Number 1. Eden Lake follows young couple Steve and Jenny, who escape for a romantic weekend getaway, where little does Jenny know Steve is planning to propose to her. After spending the night at a bed and breakfast, they set out to camp at the lake for the weekend, only to discover that it has been closed for a redevelopment project. Ignoring the warnings, they decide to sneak through the woods and go to the lake regardless, looking to indulge in having it all to themselves. Only their serenity is soon interrupted by obnoxious kids who show up to party. Steve confronts them, asking if they could keep it down, which they laugh off and go about their own business. The next morning, Steve and Jenny find that their supplies have been sabotaged and one of their tires has been slashed. After Steve takes his car into town to be fixed and complains to locals about the kids, they return to the lake to finish out their weekend plans. Only this time, word has gotten back to the kids about Steve accusing them of what happened, and they decide to take things to the next level. Eden Lake is terrifying, visceral, and beyond suspenseful because unlike many camp horror movies that we're used to watching, this could actually happen.
Yeah, so do you like to camp?
No, not at all.
Is it because of these movies?
No, I like soft beds and air conditioning and indoor plumbing and TVs. The list goes on. And I don't like bugs.
Do you like to camp? Let us know by dropping that in the comments. But do you agree with this list? What hidden gem camp horror movies are out there that you know of that we didn't talk about and maybe we should check out, or some of our nerd boxes should check out? Leave that in the comments below. Now, Eden Lake, number 1 on this list. Wow. Michael Fassbender, who is Magneto in many other films, he's in this film. And then the lookalike for Jessica Chastain is also in it.
Kelly Riley.
Yes. Great movie. Typically with some of the camp horror films, you tend to root for the antagonist. Not here. I hated all of those little pricks in this movie.
Those little fucking bastards.
Mm-hmm. And this movie, it has a cool Easter egg in there. Can't tell you what it is, but look for it when Jenny is looking at the information board in the park. It's there. Great film, suspenseful. You will like it. I haven't run into any people that when I was working on Blockbuster and recommended it back then, or even now, that have said bad things about it?
No, it's an excellent movie. I think this is one that I actually stumbled across. And
no, I did. I worked at Blockbuster.
Oh, that's right. But we had to watch it twice because you did fall asleep the first time. Not because the movie's bad. He just does that.
Well, I was working 12, 14-hour days then.
But we just watched it again recently and you fell asleep.
Oh.
Within like the last few years, you fell asleep. So, just saying. Yeah, and this is the type of thing, like we said, it's not like some guy in a mask with a machete who's preying on kids who have sex or do drugs. This is like regular people that are just psychopathic assholes, and like this could happen. Not so fun fact, when I was younger, my family camped a lot.
You were stalked by a hockey mask killer?
No, an actual group of punk teenagers cornered my cousin and I with knives. And they were saying they weren't going to let us go and yada, yada, yada. I mean, we eventually got away, and then we went and told our uncles, and that was a whole big thing because those kids were done. But I don't camp. Don't camp, people. But I mean, but that's my point, right? It can actually happen. It does actually happen. I mean, luckily, nothing bad happened to us, but it could have been much worse. And when I saw this movie, I was like, oh, see, no, I'm good. And we've even had one of our kids, only one, well, no, two, like the whole camping aspect. The two middle kids. Maybe that's the issue. It's always those middle kids, right? Yeah. But, the one daughter, she's always like, can we go camping? No, nope, not happening.
Now, we did throw on a fan film, which is free on YouTube right now, and that's something that we've kind of toyed around with. The idea is maybe finding some YouTube fan films that are out there or made for YouTube horror movies and putting some lists around that. So if you're a director or writer and have done that already, let us know. We'll get around to watching those movies and then putting a future list together for that. But Never Hike Alone is a movie that we introduced to our daughters when they were younger, because it's not like the other Friday the 13th films. We want them to see those Friday the 13th films, and they watch the TV versions of it. But this was a great introduction for it because it's a good story, it's got great suspense, and it's just well done to see something a little bit different from the entire franchise that's out there already.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of the independent fan films, so to speak, that they're complete misses. But I give them credit, right, for going out there and trying something that most people wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. But this one was definitely a hit, and there are many out there that are really good. And I feel like they, I'd watch them. I'd buy their DVD. We'll Never Hike Alone. We actually do own the Blu-ray of that.
We also have the Vengeance movies coming to us as part of their campaign. We haven't watched them yet because I wanted to watch them on the discs itself, but I'm getting a little antsy. Can't wait anymore. So
yeah, I just recently got an update on that one about a month ago, but it's just working its way through.
And then, of course, we had to throw in some comedy in there. So Bloody Summer Camp, Dave Kerr did an excellent job with that. That was released during the pandemic, so it might have gotten lost in all of that chaos of the 3 years that we were in. And then, of course, you got The Final Girls, which was very good. I honestly have to think that's probably the best camp horror comedy that's out there. It's good from start to finish.
Yeah, and we've watched that one a couple of times, and it doesn't get old. You can rewatch it. It does have rewatchability, which is very important to us, because we will rewatch movies. We have a whole video store behind this computer, and we will rewatch a lot of movies. So rewatchability is important, and that one definitely has it.
Anyway, don't forget there's a couple things that we need you to do.
Yes, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Don't just watch a video and then move on. Just subscribe. I mean, you don't turn on notifications. Just subscribe because it helps every independent YouTuber out there.
We appreciate you for watching. Until the next Pop 5.
See ya.